up to the modern era. I support this bill.
Dr. Rajan Prasad.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is my final call on this bill, on the Child Support Amendment Bill. It's been a long journey, and we have debated this in the House, in Select Committee, back in the House, through the second reading, committee stages, and now the third reading. And what we have expressed on this side of the House is disappointment about how this bill has turned out. And I have heard the arguments of the members opposite in this third reading, which are similar to the arguments they have made in all of the other stages. And there is a fundamental difference that we have with the way in which the government has gone about this particular bill. Mr. Speaker, any legislation ought to have certain principles that guide it. And this is the Child Support Bill. And therefore the principles that ought to guide it ought to be around children. And at least we ought to have taken the opportunity in this bill in designing a system that actually did put the interests of the children centre stage. And then look to see how does it pan out. And the disappointment that we have is that is something that did not happen. And Mr. Speaker, in comment after comment tonight from government members, they have indeed said that, well, that was not the purpose of the bill. That particular explanation falls very short, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of the bill is child support. And I guess the most objectionable comment was from the chair of the Social Service Select Committee tonight, when he said that it was not going to be beholden to any United Nations, and what he meant was United Nations conventions around the rights of children. So it wasn't going to be beholden to any of that. It's going to be what was good for us here in New Zealand right now. And I think the chair of the Social Service Select Committee actually misses a point. Because I'm sure he would not argue that New Zealand should abandon all of the conventions to which it has been a signatory. Because if we did, that would be untenable. It would become a pariah in the Western world, and nobody would want to do that. But Sam Lodinga was actually suggesting something like that, and I certainly found that objectionable. Objectionable more from the point of view that he did not express, as chair of the Social Service Select Committee, an intense and deep understanding of the notion of building a policy platform that places children right at the centre of it. And I know that other members opposite have also said, but this is a technical bill. It doesn't do that. But it ought to have done that. And there's been no substantive rebuttal, Mr. Speaker, from members opposite to that argument, because it is a very powerful argument. The best interest of the children should have been placed right at the centre of this consideration. And we're not alone on this side of the House in taking that view as strongly as we do, because many reputable submitters advised the importance of including this provision in the bill that stated very clearly the interests of the children will be the central guiding principle. And those who submitted on this point were significant organisations. The Children's Commissioner, very thoughtful and detailed submission. The Human Rights Commission, the New Zealand Law Society, the Auckland Coalition for Safety of Women and Children, the Child Poverty Action Group, the Dunedin Law Centre. There's just some who actually came and said here was an opportunity to take that principle and put it centre stage. And so the theme was consistent, the advocacy was powerful, and yet it was simply disregarded, because here was a bill seen as an IRD type bill, because that's where child support is based, and therefore it was just the formula that needed to be got right. And that was a mistake that happened. And the government flatly rejected the advice of those people, those eminent people. But I do wonder, Mr. Speaker, what would this bill have looked like if we actually did put the interests of children centre stage? and really got the best advice we could from around the country, from around our experts, I wonder whether we would have had a 21st century legislation for this important aspect of our life and the lives of our children. But the government was not interested and proceeded in what it describes, as I said, as a technical piece of legislation. And it really, it's that view is reflected in the current manifestation of the bill. So the bill is disappointing for that reason, Mr. Speaker. It would be useful for members opposite to realise that every piece of legislation is guided by a set of principles, and those principles ought to be articulated. And we do have a lot of advice on what those principles are. These are well-established principles in terms of philosophy and ethics, but as well as good science as well. And if the principles were based on the needs of children, putting their interests first, then the consideration of their financial interests would have been quite different. But here we have is just a consideration of financial interests, who pays and how much. And parenting is more than just that. Parenting is about how parents do participate far more palpably and powerfully in the lives of the children. So this bill then is reductionist. It has reduced a complex set of relationships between parents who are separated, the needs of their children, and who pays, to just the question of dollars and percentage of care. This approach, Mr. Speaker, inevitably has unintended consequences on those who have the primary responsibility for the care of our children. For example, Mr. Speaker, there will be a loss of income for the prime caregiver. You know, if 28% is 2 nights out of 7, and therefore the income you get is reduced accordingly, your needs don't, the needs of the parents, Mr. Speaker, don't reduce, but the amount of money will. And here there is some attempt, and I recognize it, to balance the costs to one parent having a child 2 days a week and the other 5 days a week. But clearly, those of us who have been parents and have been around parents know, and others who have been around children and parents know what it takes to look after children, have full-time responsibility for them, even if they go away for 2 nights. If the costs do not come down proportionately. So there will be unintended consequences in that particular area. The focus on percentages, Mr. Speaker, can easily be gamed, and particularly gamed by the contributing partner. And if it was gamed, then its effects will be quite negative. Mr. Speaker, the second point I wanted to make was that we have had lots of comments in this Parliament and elsewhere about the scourge of poverty, child poverty in our country. 270,000 people, children live in poverty. And that is immoral, it's untenable, it's unethical, it's almost criminal that we allow children to live in poverty. And quite a number of those are sole parents surviving on contribution from a partner through a child support system. So here was another opportunity. If children were placed centre, then at least there would have been far more robust discussion about how the child support system could be used to address poverty in that segment of our population that lives on limited income. In fact, what we've done, possibly, is made life more miserable for parents on very limited income and living on the breadline or in poverty. It actually makes it worse because the provision, Mr. Speaker, that was suggested to us by eminent people again was the pass-on mechanism, which other countries are using as well. And we know that the pass-on mechanism actually does encourage parents to meet their obligation to contribute. So, and yet there was no interest in this bill throughout its stages to look at the provision seriously. It was simply put aside. We could get no traction in the Select Committee from government members to that. So I think, Mr. Speaker, here then was another lost opportunity. And this is what happens when we do not develop strong principles, well-argued principles, and operate on that basis. This could have been an across-parliament approach to addressing this problem, because we ought not to have as many differences as we do have. But tonight we'll debate other bills as well that reflects that kind of difference of opinion. So it is for those reasons that we will not be supporting this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mike Sabin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to take a call and support